All right, morning, Vicky, and everybody else. Thank you very much for that. So 10 top tips in 20 minutes. I'm gonna rush at this a bit quick. So if there's points that I miss or they're not very clear, as Vicky said, if you put some questions up on the chat, we can come to those at the end. I think the first thing to say, hang on, get this working. The first thing to say is that direct mail remains one of the most powerful recruitment tools available. A lot of people have forgotten that there is such a thing as direct mail, and anybody under the age of 55 probably thinks it's a terribly old-fashioned medium, which it is, but it's still very powerful, and particularly in fundraising. I know a lot of you fundraisers are still doing quite a lot of direct mail. So for anybody who hasn't used it very extensively or is thinking of using it, once you discover the joys of direct mail, you will, I think, be pleasantly surprised at the strength of it. I stole this slide from my good friends at Royal Mail, and they do a lot of research, which I'll come on to in a moment. But in terms of direct mail's ability to generate donations, some fascinating facts. They are big donors. 55-plus-year-olds, for every 1,000 charity mail packs, 101 go on to make a donation. For 45 to 54-year-olds, that's 162. But even in the younger age groups, which is where you would expect digital to be much stronger, even then there's still some solid numbers. And one of the important things that I've found, and I'm sure many of you have found as well, is that the quality of those donors via direct mail is usually very, very good. They go on to make lots of further donations. So on to top tips. First top tip, you're paying for 100 grams to be delivered. This is what Royal Mail is charging you to stick this stuff through the letterboxes. It's 20 grams if you're doing an address, by the way. Why not use it? A lot of people don't. Famous old saying, the more you tell, the more you sell, still works in direct mail. Obviously, if you were buying a 60-second TV spot, you wouldn't be running a 30-second commercial in it. And the truth is, the more paper you have in your envelope, the better the result. You could have case histories, which is very powerful. You could have letters from clients or from donors telling them what a great job you've been doing. Reports from the front line, actual experiences, what's happening, where this work is being done can be very, very strong. And the extra cost of print, as long as you plan it in advance, is usually very good value compared to the response uplift you get. Once you've committed to the basic print and the enveloping and all the other stuff, adding a few more sheets of paper to get to your 100 grams is never really such an expensive process. Top tip number 2. This is a sin I commit regularly, but I've learned now that the easiest way to sort this out is through judicious editing of the letter. If you have a letter, does it really start halfway down the first page? This is a letter picked up from a splendid organisation, Breast Cancer Now. And we are, in this country, we're very polite, aren't we? We want to be very, we want to introduce ourselves. We don't want to dive in too aggressively. And this is a very good letter. There's nothing wrong with it. As you might know, being told you have breast cancer is like a bulldozer ripping through your life, but people like you make Breast Cancer Now's work possible, have shone a light. So absolutely fine, no issue with it. But when I saw this letter, if you look at the bottom where the red arrow is, I was really struck by this line. I knew something wasn't right when I went to my GP last year about an unfamiliar sensation in my left breast. But when the results of my test came back, I was in utter shock. I was only 33 and absolutely no one had expected it to be cancer. I thought that was a really powerful line. Now look what happens if we take that line and put that at the top. I knew something wasn't right, and off it goes. Now, I think all of us, when we read the copy that's either been written or when we write it, if we look down the front of that letter and find the place that's got a really dramatic start, that can have a very powerful impact on the success of your letter. Direct mail is physical. It's the only medium that you can actually feel and touch. It arrives through a letterbox. You pick it up, you open it, you do all sorts of interesting things with it, and it lasts. By the way, it will stay in the house for a very long time. And again, I'll come back to some research that demonstrates that. So that's an attribute that I think you should be thinking of using. British Legion, this was a mailing from, I think, a couple of years back. Send more than a letter, send more than a brochure. Here they're actually using a cross with a poppy on it. There's an outfit in America called Quadriga, who, or Innovare as they're now known, who do splendid mailings with things in them. And we've tried this once or twice in the UK. They can be expensive, difficult to get through Royal Mail, but nevertheless, the impact of having a physical object within an envelope can be very, very dramatic. And it's always worth having a good creative think about whether you can introduce that viably within your mailing. Tell your story only to those people who are most likely to respond. And for response purposes, and I'm not talking about brand issues or awareness or all the other things, but purely for down-to-earth response purposes, forget everyone else that you're writing to. When you mail 100 people, not all of those people are in the market. Not all of those people are the people you want to write to anyway. It's to some extent a bit of an accident that you're having to write to 100 people. And people like Bill Portlock, who's on the call somewhere, will tell you about data selections. But nevertheless, from a purely creative point of view, you should be aiming your creative at the people who are most likely to respond. A good way of looking at it is out of the 100 people that that you would normally be writing to, if you manage to get 3 of those 100 people to respond, a 3% response, that's actually a very good response rate. That would be terrific. But if you increase that by only 2 more people, you get to a 5% response rate, which is a dramatic improvement and the sort of thing that your marketing people will fall in love with you over. But the only way you can do that is by focusing on those 2 extra people. So your whole creative process needs to be ruthless about talking to those people who are most interested in what you're doing. And that goes back to my top tip, which is the more you tell, the more you sell. And again, of all of those people that you're writing to, an awful lot of people will not read any of your mailing at all. They will throw it away. Of course they will. But don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, in that case, I'll give them the least I can give them so that the chances of more people reading it go up. You're absolutely right. That's what would happen. But the more people are reading it and still not people that are interested. So if people are really interested in your cause, give them everything you possibly can. And you will find generally, and I've seen this in so many occasions, that your response rates will actually go up quite significantly. So keep a ruthless focus, excuse me, on those very few people. So, oops, hang on. I'm losing the top of my screen because I've got a bar over the top that's got all the things on it.
It will eventually go away.
It will eventually go.
You need to go back a slide, or you're right.
I can't see which tip I'm on, but there we are. Another top tip. So even in the direct mail community, we are aware of things like social media, believe it or not. We know this is happening. And of course, it's made a very big difference to the way the world is working. And if you get stuck into the whole direct mail process, you'll know that there are very many ways in which you can connect what's going on social media and online with how direct mail is working. But one of the byproducts of social media is it has generated a mass of interesting data that we can be using. And I mentioned Star Count, Star Count are one of several people doing this sort of work. But Star Count you may know from dunnhumby days, who started off the Tesco Club Card. And this is a follow-on from what they've been doing. And what they've got is a fantastic product called Star Count, which picks up by postcode. So this is very good for unaddressed, by the way, if any of you are into unaddressed. But it picks up interest groups, emotional interest groups, cause groups. If you can see on the right-hand side, there's a box: anti-racism, domestic violence, ethical food, fair trade, feminism, human rights. So what you can use is, if you've got data, you can then get it profiled through Star Count or people like Star Count, and pick out those people who are most interested in your cause. And this is all generated out of social media. So we never had this sort of data at this sort of level years and years ago, but now we can begin to bring together the sort of data that starts to make an emotional connection with the people we're writing to, rather than just a purely transactional connection, which is what we used to do. So looking at things like star count, I think could be a really interesting way forward if you're looking to produce better things. Research, but free research rather than research paid for. Now, I know, having sat through many a meeting with clients, that you are keen to do direct mail, we're keen to do direct mail, everybody's keen to do direct mail, but the board or the trustees or the chief exec doesn't really like direct mail. I mean, yes, there is prejudice against direct mail. There are people who don't really like the idea. Why can't we spend all this money on Facebook, all that sort of thing? And persuading the higher ups in your organisation can be a difficult process. You may or may not know of an organisation called JICmail. I'm surprised by the number of people who still don't. JICmail was set up with the help of Royal Mail some years ago to create a research base for the whole direct mail industry. And they have actually done an extremely good job. And the vast majority of what they've got is free to use, by the way. This is just a screen grab from one of their website bits. Mail generates reach and makes an impression. Mail drives consumer behaviours. Mail has proven resilience over COVID. Mail generates impressions more efficiently than digital channels. Measure of share of voice, time to touch. Now, those of you who are involved in other media, particularly things like television, as well as Google with Google Analytics, you know there is a wealth of analysis sitting behind those media, and the smart media agencies can usually put together a presentation for your board or for your trustees that really very compellingly proves that this is a very good way to spend your money. And JICmail does exactly the same for the whole direct mail business. They're very approachable people. Give them a call, tell them what you're looking for. They will almost, for you, put the whole presentation together and do a pitch to your board of trustees if that's what you need. So we at the WPNC have used them before, and they really are very, very good people. So give them a call. Royal Mail have got some very good postage deals at the moment. They had some very good postage deals during the COVID pandemic, and I know a lot of people were using that. They're still around in different forms. Again, if you go to the guys at Market Reach, and thank you to, if Market Reach is on the call, thank you to Market Reach for providing these slides. They've got a specialist bit within Market Reach that looks after charities, and they're really well worth talking to. So they got some really good stuff in there. So I've just picked up two of their current discount deals. So the Test and Innovate scheme, one of the problems I think we have in this business, we've now all got used to doing massive amounts of testing on Facebook and on other social media. We test 153 different approaches within the space of 3 minutes and then go with the winner. It's more expensive to do testing in direct mail, of course it is, but Royal Mail recognise that, and they're very happy to provide postage credits for eligible advertising mail within specified test periods. And that can be make quite a difference to your test budget, because test budgets are always hard to justify when you've got targets to meet. I appreciate that. But if you go to our friends at Market Reach and have a word with them, they will often be able to help you put together a decent test program. The growth incentive is also currently still available. This is to get volume growth for your successful campaign. So if any of you have already got decent campaigns running, and I'm sure you have, then if you go to Market Reach and have a word with them about the discounts you can get. Again, if it's incremental direct mail, if it's provably more than you were doing, you can get up to a 30% postage credit. Minimum 150k items. You have to have an agreed baseline. Obviously, there's terms at the bottom. Full terms and conditions apply, as you would expect. But again, well worth having a discussion with Market Reach if you haven't already got there. Talk to your mailing house first, not last. I know the process in most direct mail campaigns is you talk to the agency or to the creative people, you talk to the data people, you get all of that put together, you design the pack, you get it all ready, gets approved, and then off you go to your favorite mailing house and say, quote me on that. I don't think that's actually the right way of doing it. I think you should go and talk to your mailing house at the very beginning of the process. I sat on a judging panel the other month with the Strategic Mailing Partnership to look at the differences that mailing houses make to a direct mail campaign. And I was absolutely astonished at their ability to be very, very clever with formats, helping on postage deals, looking at personalization. The work of one of these things was 8 days a week print solutions for Hillier Garden Centres. They were mailing new obviously enough, new bills. And this was one of those moments of, oh my goodness, I didn't know you did that. Within Royal Mail, the people that run the PAF file, did anybody realize that you can now get the new build postcodes out of the PAF file? I didn't realize that. What a market. Whether it's good for fundraising or not, I don't know. But these guys were able to look at the data, were able to look at the technology. Personalization is massive these days. With print technology, you can do almost anything you like in terms of personalization. And again, if you talk to your mailing house first and see what they've got available, or discuss ideas with them, then that is usually a very good starting point. I remember years ago, we would, before we started big mailing campaigns, we would ask a big mailing house to come in with samples, and they'd come in with literally with a carrier bag, empty the samples all over the desk. We'd sort through them, pick out the ones we liked. Can you do this one in these volumes? How much, etc. And then we had a very good way of kicking off the whole process. So go and talk to your friendly mailing house at the beginning of the process, not at the end. And I think this is number 10, is it not? How are we doing for time? 10-2. If you do nothing else in your mailing, do make it urgent. Always call it an appeal. If it's Christmas, it could be this year, this month, event-driven. Now we've got marathons and other events coming back. Pandemic recovery is a great story. Dramatize the people or the animals or the forests or whatever it is waiting for help. Can you give actual numbers? A great phrase I've seen used before now is, as every day or as every hour goes by, something is happening to these causes. Is it an emergency? A funding shortfall? I did a very successful mailing for ActionAid some years ago where we discovered we were about 600,000 quid short, literally short of what they needed. And we put a mailing together and we simply said to our donor base, we're short of money, we're desperately short of money. Can you help? And of course, the money came flowing in. A recent event, so very topical. And again, we can produce direct mail within 24 to 48 hours of something happening. So earthquakes or other natural disasters, it's possible to get direct mail out very, very, very fast. And I know some of you would have been doing that, but it's a very powerful, and the difference it makes to response is in the hundreds of percent. Even with sensitivity and error by the organization itself. I remember again some years ago, a well-known charity who'd better remain nameless, they were named in a major inquiry for the death of a child, and it was a real problem. And there was a big internal debate as to whether they just kept their heads down and ignored it. But at the end of the day, they decided, and this was a colleague then, everyone knows Giles Pegram, which kind of gives the name, gives the game away as to who it was. We actually put a mailing together that was a mea culpa that said, I'm sorry, this is what we did. But one of the reasons why these sorts of things happen is we're under a lot of stress and strain. And again, the results to that mailing was not only an influx, an inpouring of cash, but also a tremendous amount of support. So even errors, as long as you're prepared to admit them, can be a very powerful part of the urgency of your whole campaign. And there you are, 10 top tips in slightly more than 20 minutes or 20 minutes-ish. Vicky.
That's great. Thank you, John. That's great. So whilst I'm just going to talk a little bit about the next sessions that we're running. Whilst I'm doing that, please do pop any more questions into the chat. We've got time to answer some questions. So this is the third in series of 4 webinars that we're running in this this autumn. So we've already had all about getting ready for Christmas appeals this year. So that's cross-channel. So that's the first webinar. There's recordings of all of these if you'd like them. There is the second webinar we did last week was all about best practice around the creative side of social videos. Today with direct mail, and next week I'm going to be talking all about how you can maximize your online donations. So join again for next week if you want to hear about that. So yeah, do feel free to, I mean, if you've already registered for today, we will actually give you the previous recordings anyway. And of course, you're welcome to join for next week as well. So let me just check the questions. All right, there's a few that are popping in. There's a comment from Bill, really, which is back to your physical point there, John. It says about that's why Moonpig works so well, to get a physical card in the post.
Yeah. I mean, they've done very well with that one. So, but worth going on the Innovare website in the States. For those of you who know about Innovare, I mean, they do the most extraordinary things. Which I say we have tried in the UK. It's the postage rates are so different that it's a struggle, but it can be a very, very powerful tool.
So got a few more questions here. So first one is, in your experience, have you found that donors sometimes find additional things in a DM pack to be a waste of charity resources, e.g. like a badge or a fridge sticker? That's from Karen.
Yes, you will get that kickback, and I think when it happens, you need to make sure that you've got an appropriate reply to them that says, yes, of course, we understand this, but we have found that by doing X, Y, or Z, badges or crosses or other things, we have found that this makes our ability to raise funds for our vital causes much more effective. We know that not everybody likes this, so happy to take your name off of the database, but this is an effective technique that we employ. But yes, the kickback you will get, I think, will be relatively minor, to be honest. But it also rather depends on what you're sending. If what you're sending is very relevant to the work of the organisation, then it will clearly be less. So you've got to pick the object with a lot of care.
Okay, thanks. Next question here from Karen Bolton is, what do you think about including reminder mailings as part of a DM campaign?
Absolutely. If I'd had 20 top tips, that would have been number 11 after number 10. When you've got data that's working for you, basically always plan to effectively double mail. So you send your first mailing out and then you send your reminder mailing out, ideally 2 weeks after that. And I've found when I've done this, I've seen up to 50% of the original response come through on the reminder mailing. There are 2 ways of doing it. One, you can do a very stripped down version, which is the logical way of doing it, because you're imagining that people have seen it before. But actually, a lot of people, if you refer back to that slide with 100 little figures on, a lot of people probably didn't even open it at that point because they weren't in the market, and they may be in the market now. And therefore, I've found it very successful to basically just reprint the whole mailing in one go. You can strip out the people that have responded, or you can put an overprint saying, you know, in case you responded, sorry to have done this twice. But it's much cheaper, of course, to print the whole thing in en masse and then just and mail it out 2 weeks later. But yes, reminder mailings, very, very, very successful.
Great. There's another similar question here, actually, I think, which is about chaser mailing. So I think you've just answered that. Somebody's asked about, could we share the slides? What we are going to be doing is sharing the recording. So we'll send that through to you in the next day or two, so that you've got the recording with the slides in it. There's another question here. How do you balance the environmental impact of direct mail, especially if your cause is environmental? This is very topical at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is where I think going and talking to the mailing house first is very important. Royal Mail have got an environmental postage scheme. Don't ask me about the details. Go to Market Reach. But as long as you're posting in an environmentally friendly way, in other words, you're using recycling materials, most mailing houses will be very familiar with how that works. So yeah, there's a lot of consciousness in the direct mail industry as to how to be as environmentally friendly as possible. So well worth going onto the Market Reach site and talking to Royal Mail and talking to your mailing house about that. Of course, you can, if you're an environmental charity, what you would do, I imagine, was you would put something in the mailing that says, we've worked hard to create this in the most environmentally friendly manner. It's a question that's come up for very many years. And I think the direct mail industry, printers in particular, have actually got very good at doing this. And it's not greenwash, by the way. They are actually very serious about doing it in the most environmental way possible.
Next question is about any recommendations on format, C5 versus DL, window size, shape, etc. And does that have a positive impact on response?
I have an abiding hatred for C5s with windows in. It's instant junk mail, isn't it? The moment an overprinted envelope, DL to some extent, but particularly C5 arrives, well, it's either junk mail or it used to be just junk mail. These days, it's a bill. Or something equally horrible. And it's probably not something that you really want to use. I've done a lot of work with getting to use closed-faced envelopes. In other words, there's no window at all. Using DLs, which are less likely, I think, to be identified as a bill. Using stamps on the envelope, and you can digitally print stamps and still get the postage discounts. Those of you who do mailings around Christmas, did you know that Royal Mail are about to announce their Christmas stamp designs, and you can print those digitally as well. And so rather than having the traditional PPI up in the corner, which again is a bit of a giveaway, you actually put a little digital stamp. You can handwrite, or apparently handwrite, envelopes. There's many machines now that will laser this stuff in. And so I would always try and get a format that was as close to having a reality as you possibly can. The interesting thing is that the further you go down that road, the more those who judge these things will ask you to put advertising material on the outside of the envelope, which can make life interesting. But if the choice, if you've got any other option than a DL window, please look at it. I know it's cheap, but again, if you talk to your mailing house, they will have equally good formats available. And the games you can play with formats now are stunning. I mean, go and sit with some of these mailing guys and just have a look at what they can produce. It's more than entertaining. It also makes a real impact on on people's reactions when this comes through the post.
Great, thank you, John. I think they're all the main questions, and there was just a comment there from Nicola from Royal Mail who said she's happy to support any charity. So I've just
right, great, Nicola. Yes, Nicola's been very helpful in putting this together. Thank you, Nicola, and please speak to Nicola. Absolutely first class and terribly helpful.
Excellent. Right, I think we're at the end, so that's perfect timing. So thank you very much, John, on behalf of everyone on the call. I hope you all enjoyed it and took a few pointers away with you today. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all again soon, and we'll send around the recording in the next day or so, so you'll be able to have that too. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good day. Bye. Bye-bye.